Okay, welcome everyone to this skill sprint. It's a technology preview with Marco Cantu of the Enterprise Mobility Services push notifications capability. Marco, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, David. So yeah, this is a preview of a feature for the coming release of RadStudio. And the specific is the support for push notifications, mobile push notifications for the Enterprise Mobility Service architecture. A skill sprint, as you know, is just a short, focused top session, generally covering one specific topic, and like in this case. And there is some introduction, but then there is an actual live demo that I'm doing live, and so there is a chance that it might work or not work. We'll see how it turns out. Generally, the features that we demonstrate are available in the free trial download. In this case, you can still get the XC7 free trial to experiment and understand the Enterprise Mobility Service, but not use the push notification, which is a new feature still not released. So what is EMS, or Enterprise Mobility Services? It's a ready-to-use middleware server. So unlike DataSnap or other technologies which are build it yourself technologies, are like the building blocks you assemble to create a service, EMS is really ready to use. It takes minutes to be up and running. It provides user management and authentication. It provides a web console tracking the API REST calls and the connected devices from the users. And then you program it by adding modules, technically loadable modules, because you don't recompile the server in itself. You create these loadable modules, so you load them and you provide the specific APIs. One of the features you can provide is enterprise SQL database access through FireDuck from your REST APIs. EMS comes with other features. It comes with Interbase server side. It's a free license of that if you don't have another server that's already in use. And it comes with Interbase to go and to be embedded on the mobile devices. That's a high quality, high performance, and database with full encryption support, so you don't have data in clear on your devices in case they get lost or stolen. In practice, EMS is very simple to use in terms of building server modules and building mobile and desktop clients. So you can also have VCL clients, not only FireMonkey ones, but of course, one of the key focuses is the mobile support. It's self-hosted, so it's not hosted by us, but it's self-hosted, meaning you can set it on a traditional server. You can create your own personal cloud using Amazon, Azure, or any other service, and install EMS, which basically is deployed as a nice API DLL for a Microsoft Internet Information Server on Windows servers. The license is a per user fee, which means that you have to pay per user, but you don't have to pay per application or per call or per volume. So if you have multiple applications running on the infrastructure, you'll still have to pay per every user, even if you have dozens of applications running and being involved. And now, for example, even the push notification support is not something you have to pay separately for, as it comes built into EMS. In terms of technical overview, this is the picture that explains what I was describing in words. You have clients that talk using REST APIs to EMS servers, and the EMS server has a local database for the users and grouping and permissions, analytics, and so on. And then it can talk through FireDuck with any enterprise database. So this is EMS. Now, what is a push notification? A push notification is a notification sent to your devices, mostly mobile, although notifications are coming to the desktop. There are notifications that are sent to the device after the application on the mobile device authorized the operation. So the application has to sign up, has to configure itself, telling, hey, I am this application, I can receive the push notifications. After that step, they can receive notifications when the application is running, but also when the application is not running. And this makes it quite interesting because on a mobile device, there's generally one application in the foreground, and everything in the background can be disabled and stopped by the operating system. So it's very important to be able to communicate back to the user of that has the mobile phone or mobile device and notify something to him. Tell him that there is something relevant to do. There is a new invoice to validate, there is a new order coming from a customer, there is something that's happening in the business, or of course you have clearly seen those for games. There is something that's relevant that is triggered by a server, it's not triggered by the local application running on the device. There are two core providers for what we are concerned. One is Google Cloud Messaging, which is of course the provider used by Android, and the other is Apple Push Notification, APN, and GCN. These are the two acronyms. And Apple Push Notification is for iOS, of course. So in the past, so one thing you have to do is the application itself has to require specific permissions. On Android, there is an app permission, but also you have to enter API key for the application. That's a key that Google will give you. On iOS, the way that was done in the past was to use a similar permission, but actually you have to, the correct way is to have a specific entitlement file that includes the push notification support. That's something you configure on the Apple services for developers. Now, in the past, we had push notification support available through Parse, Kinvi, App42, and other backend as a service providers. In the future, we'll have direct support without using any of these intermediaries, direct support inside EMS. So what happens is that with this scenario, not only your application can use HTTP REST calls, which are unidirectional, to reach the EMS server, but the EMS server has a way to reach back the client via this Apple and Google services using the push notification. So this is the theory. Now let's see if we can get the actual demo up and running. I'm going to go through the steps in slides, and then we'll go to the real demo. So in this case, I'm using Android. So I had to go through the enabling the Google Cloud Messaging support, which is one of the developer features that you can activate. The second thing, you need an EMS server running. Now, in general, you create modules in the EMS server and provide APIs. To run this specific demo, you don't need anything because all of the bits and pieces are already built into EMS server itself. So this is actually a log of a push notification. You can see actually 3 push notifications. It's a log I captured earlier, and it's useful because you can see what's happening, what's going on. But again, you just need to have an EMS server running. You don't need a specific module for a minimum in pure push demo. Of course, you need it in the real world. This is the client. This is the client that can receive the push notifications, and it has a push events component and an EMS provider component. These two are connected, and I'll get you to the actual details. The two main operations here are register for installation and then having an event that will that is hooked to the push events component. Test connection is just a call to EMS just to make sure that the two are visible, but it's not actually relevant in the demo itself. Finally, another new technology that's coming is a console for managing users, groups, installations, and push, which is it's good for testing, not much more than that, It's good for testing. You can actually create a sample message and send it to specific devices or all of the devices. And so it's quite good because you can make sure that everything is up and running. And then the last thing I'm going to show you, if everything works, is surprisingly a VCL client that can participate into the entire architecture. And that's relevant because you can have existing VCL applications with business logic, and at a given point in the workflow, they can actually send a push notification to generally not all of the connected devices, but to some very specific devices. So there is some information for a given user, there is a document, there is something in the workflow that requires the attention of a user. You can send a push notification to the mobile device of that user who's running a mobile Delphi or C++ based application. So again, the VCL application will just talk with EMS, and the application running on the device will get notified. Okay, so this is the idea. Now let me stop the slides for a second and bump into the virtual machine that I have here. Okay, and there are too many things running. Okay, yeah, sorry, wrong resolution. So this is the client, which is the client able to receive a push. It has a connection with the EMS provider. It's just configured on localhost. Oh, and then, yeah, then it gets the actual IP address from this edit when the application starts. The other component is push events, which is connected with the EMS provider. And push events has the actual events for device registration and other things, and most importantly, push received. So when we're receiving the push, again, this is a really low-level demo. It's not really nice-looking scenario, just a technical demo. So it basically extracts all of the information, either for Apple or Google data formats, and display that information on the screen. The other thing it can do is do a test connection and just call this handshake and test operation. Okay, so let me see if I can now show my device. The thing I can do here, I've already done the registration, the register installation operation, which is also very simple. It's just a matter of calling a method of the push events. So it's really quite straightforward. And then I can do test connection, and I can talk with EMS, the EMS server. But now the nice thing is not talking with the EMS server, but be able to receive information from a push event. So let me actually open the console here. And here I can create a message. Let's create a new unique message, hello 44. And I can pick the devices that have been registered on this EMS server. It's only this one. And then I can do send. And if all is well, hey, we've got the notification to the phone coming from Google. So what this console client does, it talks with the EMS server. The EMS server creates the Google notification, and Google will send the notification to the actual device. Now, what might happen is that the application is actually not running on the device, so I'm going to terminate the application, and then I'm going to go to the client and say, okay, let's do this as 45, and send another notification here. And what should happen, and already happened on the phone, it takes a little to refresh, is actually sending a push notification to the application. Now, when I click on it, it will open the application and actually receive the data, 45. Okay, so last thing I want to show you is I need to open a different demo, and this is the push client, which is a VCL application. Again, as I was mentioning, you can get a VCL application, server side, you can get any other application involved, because for sending the push notification, you don't need to be a receiver. All you need to have is a connection to EMS, which here is running on really on the local machine, and then a backend push object connected to it. Now, all you need in this VCL application is, after you have configured the EMS endpoint, is 2 lines of code. This is my message, send it. This push is a broadcast, so we'll send it to every device that is connected. And again, we can keep tracking this because we're going to get this push notification request in the console, but ultimately, if we run the application and keep the server run here and keep the phone with the device running, let me check. I have connectivity. It seems to be. So this is Marco at SkillSprint. Again, VCL application. It got to the EMS server and it was received by the device. So now I have the information going from the VCL application being pushed to the physical device. And that's what I wanted to show for this skill sprint. So this is, again, new feature coming in the next release of Rad Studio. There is another preview coming, focused on Box2D next week, how to add physics support to your desktop and mobile apps. And you can take advantage of the current offers, buy XC3 and get the next major release for free, which is going to have the features we are showing. There are other offers active. There's a buy one, get one offer. There is another option to upgrade from very old versions of the product with also buying the upgrade support for a discounted fee. And a bonus pack still active, providing lots of other tools. So just head to embarcadero.com offer to get all of the details. But there is, it's actually a very good time now to get to XC7 if you're not there, and be ready for the next version of Rad Studio. And so this is the end of the skill sprint, and we can open it up for Q&A.
Alf has a question here. He asks, can applications talk across platforms? For example, like both Android and iOS, so an Android user can notify an iOS user, even if they're using different technologies.
Yes, absolutely, and that EMS can be the conduit. So basically what happens is that as you register a device on EMS for push, EMS will know if it's an Android or iOS device and will have a unique device ID. So at this point, when you're saying broadcast, or the other thing you can do, you can subscribe to a channel, so you can have multiple channels, multiple topics or areas, and so you can have individual devices that are interested in not the entire communication, but only a subset. So what you can do if you're doing a broadcast or a broadcast to a channel, all of the devices registered, regardless of the fact they are Android or Google or iOS, will get involved. It's up to EMS to trigger the right request to either Google or Apple, but it's completely transparent to you. So all you see is simply the you just have to send, and it's, again, there's nothing you have to do, and it's completely transparent. Actually, what I can show you is that in the console, if I can get back to my, in the console here, when you get the installations, so these are the device register, and so there is a device type, Android. So at this point, the system knows that to communicate with this device, it has to use Google Cloud messaging. And I think even here, yeah, you can also filter by device type, so you can send a communication only to Android, only to iOS, or to all devices, or to individual devices, or to, or you can use these channels to communicate only within a specific topic. And you need the client to be registered on a channel for the channel to exist.
And just as you showed, a VCL application can cause a push notification to happen.
Yeah, again, talking to the EMS server, the VCL application can trigger the notification to an individual device or all of them. But if you have your business logic built on a server-side infrastructure, even DataSnap or a custom server, you have notification back from your database to some code written with RAD Studio, you can have that hooked into any piece of code that you write. It's really quite trivial to drop those components or write some code to, you basically have to send a call, make an API REST call to EMS to start the push notification mechanism. So in theory, even languages other than Object Pascal and C++ could be involved, because ultimately it's just sending the right HTTP call to EMS.
And again, that EMS backend or that backend push component could be pushed from your Android phone, right?
Sure. Yeah, you can have. I mean, you can have. In this demo, I have the client running on device that does not trigger the notification. It's only a receiver, but it can be both sender and receiver. So it could be a broadcasting. So you use one device to talk with all of the other devices. That's not probably that common in the real world. It's more something in the application logic that triggers a notification.
Yep. And again, it could be any type of application, a console app, a web server app.
Yeah, absolutely. For trigger notification, anything will do. For receiving notification, you need to be on mobile.
I mean, even a DataSnap server could do a backend.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a REST call. So a REST call to the EMS server. You can even do it on the browser manually if you want. It's not ideal. And actually, this client actually shows you how you can create the actual. This is technically the data structure that you are sending with the target and the data. So this is the physical low-level structure that is sent over to the EMS server using the post HTTP call.
Zvota is asking, when will this technology be available?
When the next version of RAD Studio is released, which is still not announced today.
And remind.
DMS itself is already in XE7, but the push support is a new feature for the next release.
And just a reminder, if you're not on XE7, purchase it now and you'll get update subscription built in so that you'll get the next release when it's ready. That's one of the special offers that's good till the end of March. Is the 10-user EMS available to those who already have upgraded?
Oh, that's something I honestly don't know. I know there is this offer, but I don't know the actual details for that. By default, when you're getting EMS, you get a development server, which is only for testing. It's not for deployment. This is a 5-user connected to it. That's a separate one. This is a really deployment license for 10 users, but I don't know the actual details of that offer.
There's some more details if you go to the Embarcadero.com/rad offer page. Then you'll see the details. Okay. Bjorn is just saying, nice sprint, Marco.
Thanks.
And again, all of you can check out a lot of the functionality that's already in EMS Server in the XE7 trial. If you don't have XE7, you get the Architect Edition, so you can download and do testing of EMS, create some endpoints, and call the endpoints from different client applications, including VCL. It's just this preview of this new technology that's being worked on for adding push notification support to the EMS server. So,
And of course, there are other features coming like this client console for managing users. There are quite a few extra features that are coming to EMS in the next release. But push is clearly the most important one because it provides the ability to communicate back to your tens or hundreds of clients on mobile devices to notify them there is something relevant and make them one click away to start the application with the given information which is passed to the application, so you can like go to the specific page, open the specific record, whatever is required by the message.
Mark is asking, why pay for EMS when you can set up exactly the same function in a REST server and free GSM or GCM, Google Cloud Messaging push notifications?
You can set it up for free, and then you can also set up the Apple account and configuration and write the server code, and then you can create a database with users and grouping, and then you can create the store the analytics, and then you can create a nice JavaScript front end to show the analytics, and then you can create a console for importing, exporting your users. Yeah, as a developer, you can do that. We honestly think it's much more effective and makes more sense for a business to have a server up and running in 10 minutes rather than after 3 months of development. But you can use both approaches. I mean, if there's nothing in EMS that cannot be built, in fact, we are building it. But that's true for any technology. So yeah, you can create your own compilers, you can create your own editors, you can create your own operating system. But at times it's handy to use something pre-built because, again, I could get this up and running in 5 to 10 minutes rather than 10, 20 days. And that makes sense for a business. I mean, honestly, most of us are developers because we are building something for a company. And if the company can buy an existing infrastructure rather than having to build it with the unknown time it's going to take, it can be very effective. Yeah, it's not free, but you have to balance. And again, if you want to go the other way around, you can just go DataSnap, have free deployment, build wire your own infrastructure. But there was quite some development effort to get this infrastructure up and running. And so if you want to throw in a few months of work and rebuild it, it's possible, but it's probably not worth in economic terms.
Yep. In EMS, everything is pre-built for you. You just drop in your business logic that's built into a package and then start adding users and start calling endpoints. Pretty simple. Milan's asking, are there any examples of native iOS Android push notification integration included in RAD Studio without convey, parse, EMS, and so on? And I don't know of any. Jeff?
No, because you need server logic. It's not that you can. I mean, there is nothing like a simple REST call to Google or to Apple that provides you with the mechanism. You need to create a server, and there are guidelines, there is documentation on how to do that, but you need to create a separate server to talk with these messaging services. And so that's why it's worth considering using EMS, because you save that server development. You can have just a client that calls into an API. Well, you can have the client that calls into an API if you're using parse and convey, but they also have an associated fee depending on volume, while EMS is only a per user fee. I mean, it's a different model, but yeah, there was some code for building I think an iOS server written with Delphi. I think I saw it some time ago, but it's not trivial to get that code and keep it up and running and maintain it, because some of the specifications change over time. So that's why we don't have like a complete server stack, because that's something that requires serious development time.
Yeah, I forget who it was. I think it was Victory Fernandez. He built his own iOS server side?
Yeah, I think that,
showed a Delphi example that made the rest calls. So you just, I think, search Google for Delphi iOS push, something like that. I should say that Jeff Lefebvre, I'm putting this into the Q&A, did a talk at Code Rage 9. So if you look for Google or Android push notifications in the Delphi track for Code Rage 9, Jeff Lefebvre, Lefebvre, he went through a Java interface, he had a third-party Java library, and he showed how you could build a Delphi app and get push notifications through Google Cloud messaging. So there's a couple examples out there. There's nothing that we ship. We believe in using and leveraging those backend services, but you can do the work yourself on both the client and server side if you want to. Bjorn is asking, what would be the best strategy for an application, client, and server where the server is a web service REST and a call from a client is response critical, must receive a final result, let's say from 2 minutes or so? Could EMS help here?
No, I don't think that Google and Apple notifications are so absolutely reliable in terms of timing. They're generally pretty fast, but I don't think they provide a guarantee in terms of the time it takes to deliver a message. And also the device could not be under reach. I was trying this morning, and my office hasn't got a very good connectivity for data, and so at times I couldn't get a notification just because my phone wasn't really in range. So that's the problem you might face. So the reliability of the infrastructure is not a given. So I won't consider this for a really critical timing. At that point, you'll need to have the application always running on the device and pinging the REST server at like seconds interval, and potentially receiving and sending back information.
So Mark has a question: why use EMS when you've got DataSnap?
Because DataSnap was a great architecture, but it has had years and years of layers, starting with the COM infrastructure and then moving to HTTP layer and then moving to, socket layer and then moving to an HTTP layer. We've looked at the infrastructure and it was difficult to make it modern and at the same time retain the backwards compatibility that most of our customers will legitimately require. So we decided to split it and create a new infrastructure which is clearly REST and HTTP focused, stateless, and like for the modern world. But at the same time, we keep updating and improving and cleaning up DataSnap because that makes sense to keep it up and running. But again, it will be very difficult to redo DataSnap in a way that is compatible with the modern REST architectures, and at the same time making it backwards compatible. So we decided to split it. And then while we decided to split it, we also decided for a different way of monetizing the development. We can put way more effort in building a much more refined server because there is a fee, a runtime fee attached to it, which is what most other vendors in the same space are charging.
Yeah, and again, it's your choice. If you want to build a bunch of the functionality from the building blocks of DataSnap, you can. But EMS, everything is pre-built for you except for the business logic endpoints, right? The user management, device management, storage management, all of those things, and more to come. So think of EMS, it's pre-built. You can deploy it easily. You just build the business logic packages. Whereas with DataSnap or other technologies, you build up the functionality you want. So it's your choice. We give you both.
Sure, and it comes with a lot of features. Now, you might not need all of them, but honestly, having an encrypted database on device for most business applications makes a lot of sense. And if you look at the price of Interface to Go and the price of EMS per user, almost half of the cost is, I mean, you just pay more than half of the EMS cost just for buying the Interface to Go license.
Let's see. Alpha's asking, so having a server, you could set up a push notification server?
Well, when you're installing EMS, it is a push notification server out of the box. As was discussed earlier, the alternative is to build something yourself manually. But when you're installing EMS server in the next release of RadStudio, you'll get a push notification engine immediately available. All you need to do is sign up with Google and Apple for an account and plug that account ID into the EMS server INI configuration file and into the applications.
Yep. Let's see. P. Edwards was asking about EMS pricing. EMS pricing is on the, I think it's on the App Methods site.
It should be somewhere also on the RadStudio site, hopefully.
Let's see. Maybe I can find it over here. Got a couple computers.
I think it starts roughly at $100 a user, and then it goes down if you when you scale and you want a larger number of users.
Let's see. Just, I'm always bad at finding the pricing for things. Here we go. I think it's down there. Yeah, if you go to, here, let me type it in. www.app. This is one place to find it. Okay, so if you go to appmethod.com/pricing, and then you scroll down, you'll see the EMS pricing. You get 5 development licenses. That's if you have RadStudio Enterprise and above, or App Method. And then it has bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And for the higher levels of number of users, contact our sales offices or resellers. Okay. Okay. Oh, so, let's see. Bjorn is asking, you mentioned channels. Is that comparable to deprecated DBX version? Or is it's really just a virtual name for a collection of devices?
Yeah, it's simpler because it hasn't got the concept of automatically callbacks like the old the old DBX version, which is still in DataSnap. So the channel is just a string. It's just a name description to filter out the information. So I don't know, you might have an organization, you want to have information sent to groups of people, but again, rather than sending to groups, you send to people that have a subscription to that name. So it could be information for agents, for customers, for resellers, for partners, for whatever group, or it could be more logical. So suppose you are creating a service for that covers sport matches. You can sign up for your favorite team or for a group of or a few teams. And so when there is a new result for your team, you get a push notification, hey, that player scored for your team. So you can, again, that's kind of an obvious scenario. You just it's really a very standard observer pattern where you notify for A, B, C, D, and then there are a number of events that are associated with these names. And if you're registered for that name, you get the notification.
Does the push get to the device once the device is connected, or So, for example, if a device is not connected or it's off and it comes back on, does the device get the push?
Yeah, you should get the push when the device gets back on. This is not up to us. This is up to Google and Apple, but that's the standard behavior. As the device gets back online or visible to the data connectivity, because it uses data connectivity, it doesn't use um, yeah, I mean, it uses the standard phone connectivity. It's not like an HTTP request or anything like that. When the device is back online, you should receive the notifications.
How can a per user license work with a public facing website?
The concept behind EMS is not to be used on public facing websites, but more to be used internally for as an engine for applications. So when you're using applications, you somehow have someone downloading it. Yeah, it could be a lot of people or a few people, you don't know. We are technically, if you make anonymous calls, you don't need users. Now the license says you shouldn't do that, and we're going to rectify the license. We certainly want to allow usage of EMS for pure web calls without a user and authentication in a more open way. We still have to nail down the exact details for the license, but that's something that's clearly it would be very restrictive, and it doesn't make much sense. But again, the concept is built, the architecture is meant for building clients, not for building, I mean, application clients, not building web clients or websites.
I guess you could have a public site where people would pay to join, right? And then
Sure, no, but I mean, but it makes sense. I mean, if you have the same APIs, you might want to serve them in a protected application where you have customers, you have users, you have login, you have the analytics, but you might also want to serve the same APIs to like a JavaScript page or an anonymous scenario where, I mean, anonymous not meaning that the user hasn't got a login of some sort, but is not logged into EMS, hasn't got an account, hasn't got the push notification, hasn't got the usage analytics for the individual user or groups. And of course, the other thing, he won't have an interface to go license, which is part of the deal. So I'm still hoping to get that written down in license legal terms. But it's certainly open, and I'd be more than happy to follow up if you have specific questions on this issue. Again, the intention is to open it up to some extent, not completely open, but to some extent for anonymous users.
And there's the special offer right now for if you purchase or upgrade to Enterprise, you get 10.
Sure, yeah, you get 10 user license.
Which would be great for deployment to a small business, for example. So
sure.
One model is deploy this to a small business you're building apps for, or for a department that you're building apps for, and then you know your users by the users inside the department or the users of the employees of a small business, for example.
But most of these backend as a service providers, and actually even more the MIP, the middle tier enterprise providers, have a per user license fee. Now, at times, significantly higher than what we are charging, but that's another story. I don't want really to get into pricing too much in this webinar.
Yep. Is the authentication method pluggable? Does it support LDAP?
The current, let me phrase this properly, the current authentication method in RStudio XE7 is hard-coded, and so it's limited. But you can expect in a future release to have a more open authentication mechanism that will provide a way for a developer to hook to LDAP. So it's a feature that it's relevant and it's coming.
Okay. Let's see, any push notification support for desktops, Mac OS 10 and Windows?
I'm actually not 100% sure of this Mac OS 10 support. I don't think we support this. Certainly Windows 10 is going to have an equivalent push notification mechanism based on an Azure messaging. It's a new thing. It's not on the current version of Windows. So we will certainly looking forward to support those kind of push notification. However, that will require Windows 10 likely. I don't think Microsoft is going to backport that technology to Windows 8, but it's up to them. So yeah, whatever the platform supports, we plan going, and we plan extend this to desktop.
Yep.
But that will be in the future.
Got it. So then Carrie was asking, when Marco says push notification will be available in EMS, does it mean the future or the future?
No. In the next release of RAD Studio, these are what we are previewing. There will be push notifications.
And so what you were just saying, for desktop targets, for example, that might be in a future.
Yeah, for desktop targets, that's another no. What we are going to support is push notifications for Android and iOS.
I suppose you could build a desktop app that would listen for something coming from an EMS, could call an EMS server method.
Yeah, I mean, on EMS you can do on the desktop. The difference that you can do some polling. You can use other technologies because you can expect the application to be running in the tray icon or something like that, and keep checking if is there anything for me. That's something you cannot do on mobile. Well, partially you can do it, and we don't fully support it on Android. But honestly, something you don't do on mobile because that will just waste your battery and your power and your CPU. And then the operating system can really kill misbehaving application too. So on mobile, you really need this push notification mechanism. On desktop, it would be nice to have as well, but it's not as required. And also on desktop, you tend to have a more stable internet connection compared to mobile. So that's another reason.
Davis is asking, how do we do that Android screen view? That's the
Jim McKeith's Android screen view. There are many others floating around. I also have a VNC app, which actually I tend to use at times for my Android device.
And so you can go to Jim's Delphi.org blog or just search Jim McKeith Android Screen View, and he's got I think it's in a Git repository. You can get the source code.
Yeah, that's an open project built in Delphi. It just hooks to ADB to get the image every second or so.
Thomas is asking, you always state that EMS is to be used inside enterprises. Yes, hence its name, Enterprise Mobility Service. And the license agreement is tailored for this use. Are you considering another licensing model for the future for public use with having thousands of users?
We are considering it, but it's partially debatable. I mean, it's the technology, the architecture, the analytics support, some of the code that we have. I mean, it will scale to thousands of users, but if I don't know, considering I want to roll out a game on mobile, I'm hoping to have millions of users. Honestly, any single server or even multiple server as EMS can be load balance scenario, it won't be the right model. I mean, using Parse or Kinbay or one of these public cloud services that can really scale to the millions probably would make a better be a better model. Having said this, we are considering, as I was mentioned earlier, a way to use to let you use APIs with Start Analytics and with unlogged users or public users. So we are evaluating something in that direction. But the tool has a specific goal. It's not a replacement for for a large-scale bus scenario like Parson, Kinvey, or Up42. It's not a replacement for Google game services or similar Apple services. So it has its enterprise focus, and it's honestly, in other scenarios, the price won't be interesting, and some of the even the performance might not be what's expected. I think it's pretty good on the scenario it's intended for. Might not be ideal for other scenarios.
Okay, Carrie asked about, I think it was Carrie, about EMS is doing the logic and formulating the push and has the device information, the user information, but it's still going through Google Cloud Messaging and Apple push notification system, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's something that only Google and Apple can provide. So everyone else, the bus providers, Parson, Kinvey, and whatever, and if you create a custom server, you still have to go through Google and Apple to be able to send a push to the device. Unless, I mean, I know some third parties have tried to roll out their own architectures, but that's probably not a great idea. So what EMS does has the ability to, I mean, first when you register a device, EMS automatically knows which platform it is, the device is on. So the user can have multiple devices, and then the device has a platform. So automatically, when you say notify to all, or notify to all who subscribe to a given topic or category, then at that point, it's up to EMS to figure out which of the routing, I mean, Google Cloud Messaging or Apple, has to go through depending on the device. This is something that EMS will manage for you, and yeah, we could potentially extend it for Windows and other scenarios.
And Robert asks, are there any plans to allow a database other than interbase on the back end? And I'm going to take that, I think, two ways as a question. I mean, there's one part which is your business logic and whatever back-end database it wants to talk to versus what EMS uses for managing users, devices, and so on, right?
Yeah, I mean, EMS uses an interbase, actually on production, an interbase encrypted database for managing users, managing devices, managing the analytics data. Now, for your business data, you can do whatever you want. You can use FireDuck and hook to any database. You can even use DB Express or a third-party driver. You just get the entry point for the REST call, and you write any code you want. But for the backend, yeah, it's tied to it because, for example, the licensing goes through the interbase database.
Okay, and then Richard is asking, and I'm going to read this and then maybe put a comment there. We would like using it for business applications, but with thousands of users, not for games. And Richard, you could do this. You could buy sets of user licenses and deploy for your different businesses that you serve, or you could host your own EMS server with all the business logic for your business applications, and then provide that service for users along with the user license, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the idea. In fact, is to let it scale. It can be deployed on a load balancing server with multiple IIS engines. It has some of this core tenet built into the architecture. And in terms of cost, yes. I mean, when you start with a few licenses, it's roughly $100 a user. But when you go to the thousands, the price drops to a half or a third or even less of that price. And honestly, if you have the need to deploy to a large number of customers, you can talk to us, talk to one of our salespeople, or even email to myself. We'll probably get a good deal for EMS. Again, it's if you consider, I mean, I've been looking at initiatives in this area like IBM and others. I mean, like the big guys. I mean, the prices are in a different league. So, I mean, significantly higher. I mean, 10, 20, 100 times higher than what we are asking for an EMS deployment scenario. So again, it's open, it's flexible, it scales. It includes the interface to go client, which provides encrypted database on mobile, which for an enterprise is kind of required if you want to store any temporary data on a mobile device, have it encrypted in a secure way. So we think it's a good balance of features and cost, even for a large-scale app. But again, we're open to discussion and on the specific pricing details.
And also, there's a future. I mean, it's mentioned in the roadmap, right, Marco, that one of our goals is to have support for Linux server development.
Absolutely, yeah. We still don't have a time frame for that, but the main reason to build a Linux support would be to host DataSnap and EMS servers on a Linux machine. So in case you're deploying to the cloud, that would end up with cheaper hosting cost compared to hosting Linux servers. And it's just a matter of preference for some of the IT departments to have Linux or Windows servers.
And if you missed it, Marco had a skill sprint earlier in the skill sprint series showing how to use Apache modules.
Oh, sure. And then last fall, I did an EMS database skill sprint as well.
Okay, Richard has, and this is the right Richard versus the Thomas that I called Richard, sorry. Asked, not sure if I missed this, but when is the printed version of your Object Pascal handbook coming out?
Well, not before I finish writing it. There should be an update. I don't think it was pushed, but there should be an update in the next few days with another 4 chapters, another PDF that you can get for free as if you are on XC7. It's part of the bonus pack, but it's still short of 3 chapters, so I don't know. I mean, when I'll have time, but it's difficult to find time these days.
Okay, so 3 more chapters to go.
Yep. But again, there will be an updated version compared to the PDF that was distributed last November. That with some more content. Actually,
so XC7 customers, just go out to your registered user downloader.
Yeah, I don't think it's there yet. It should be in the next few days. I need to check with one of the product marketing managers if it has been posted or when it will be posted online.
I guess the way is you go to your registered user downloads, and if you see a more recent date that it was uploaded into Code Central, then oh, every time the dog barks, that means it's time to end the skill.
Kind of.
No, it's not that way. And there's no more questions in the queue, so it's a perfect time, Ben. Thank you, Marco.
Okay, thanks a lot.